Sanje Chedang Soiki Chonam La Janjo Bado Dani Chapsuchi Dagi Jinzo Ribe Sanamji Rola Pinchi Sanje Rupa Sanje Chedang Soiki Chonam La Sanjo Bado Dani Chapsuchi Dagi Jinzo Jepe Sanamji Rula Benji Sanje Rupajo Sanje Chera Soje Chonamba Janjo Bado Chasuji Dagi Jinzo Jepe Sanamji Rula Benji Sanje Rupajo Padan Zave Lama Rinpoche Dagi Jiwo Beme Dinshula Kadin Jimbo Gone Jezonde Kuson Dujina Sandu So, good morning to everybody. For some reason I feel the microphone is a little louder today. Fortunately, that's a little better now. Oh no. Okay. So today we continue with Komitin Rinpoche's commentary on the 7 points of mind training, and we've reached the 6th point, or if you like to call it that, the 6th chapter, which is entitled The Pledges of Mind Training. So this title needs a clarification actually. The word being translated as pledges in English is the Tibetan damsik, which itself is the translation from the Sanskrit term samaya. And therefore, actually, there's a contradiction in that title, in giving this chapter that heading, because there are no samayas or damsik outside of Vajrayana. And in general, Lojong is not a Vajrayana practice, as I've said a few times, because Vajrayana practice depends on initially receiving the appropriate initiations. And it's only in initiations that samaya or damsik is given to the disciple, to the recipient of that initiation. Of course, Lojong, being part of the general Mahayana, is very much related to the Bodhisattva vow. It's a way of maintaining and developing our Bodhisattva vow. So vows are serious for us, but it's not truly the case that there are samayas with Lojong. There's serious ethical commitment, of course, derived from the Bodhisattva vow, which Lojong practitioners should value. And so the reason this is titled erroneously in a way, but deliberately, Lojong pledges, is to say you need to take your Bodhisattva vow and the core of the Lojong practice, you need to take it extremely seriously. Just as when one receives Vajrayana initiations and therefore accepts samaya, we must guard them incredibly seriously. So it's a kind of a deliberate choice to use the term samaya here, even though it's not strictly correct. It's a deliberate choice to make sure we do take the practices of Lojong and ethical commitment of Lojong, that we do take it extremely seriously. So I just wanted to clarify that. because otherwise there's the possibility that people will kind of go away with this mistaken impression that now they've taken a samaya, but you haven't with Lojong. So let's read a little from the chapter 6. As Rinpoche says, there are 16 pledges. Now, you know now what the term pledge signifies here in Lojong. There are 16 pledges to be guarded by Lojong practitioners, and they are as follows. In other words, there will be 16 lines from the root text, each which will follow, each of which tell us about a particular form of commitment that we need to guard to keep the spirit of Lojong alive. Because the whole point about pledges, Vajrayana pledges, is that it's only by maintaining the pledges made during the initiation that you can, through the practice of your Vajrayana sadhana, come to gain accomplishments, up to and including Buddhahood itself. So similarly, if you want to derive the benefits, the success, so to speak, of the Lojong practice that you're doing, these are the kind of, this is the way you do it, by maintaining it, following these verses here. So the first one from the root text, Geshe Chekawa says, always train in the 3 general points. So of course, now we need to know, well, what on earth are the 3 general points? Fortunately, Rinpoche is going to ride to our rescue now and explain the 3 general points. So he says this, having gone for refuge to the 3 jewels, of course, the way we become a Buddhist in the first place, having gone for refuge to the 3 jewels, study the path of the 3 trainings, and these being the points held in general. So 3 trainings actually generally in Dharma means the trainings of moral discipline, the foundation upon which everything rests. The second training, meditation, to bring about stillness of mind. And the third, based on those first 2 trainings, the training in wisdom, to learn to discriminate the nature of reality. Those are the 3 general trainings. Nagarjuna says in the friendly letter, all the more than 150 trainings taught by the Buddha can be included in these 3. Trainings of moral discipline, meditation, and wisdom. So every Dharma person should be training in those 3 trainings. And the Rinpoche says, this being the points held in general, the 3 general trainings, a mind training practitioner will also maintain the 3 following points. First, the mind training of not breaking pledges. Secondly, the mind training of not straying into foolish conduct. This will be explained. The mind training, and thirdly, the mind training of not straying into partiality or bias, if you like. So, and the Geshe Chekawa says, you must always train in these 3 general points. So the first one of these 3 Lojong points, Rinpoche says, whichever major or minor precepts of the 3 vehicles you have promised to uphold, strive to avoid the taint of moral faults with mindfulness, clear comprehension, and concern. If a fault occurs, aim to purify it right away by confession. So, the sense of this is, even though Lojong might be your key practice, right at the center of your spiritual life, as a Buddhist follower, it's likely, or maybe even inevitable, that you'll have received teachings from all the 3 vehicles, the Shravaka vehicle, the Bodhisattva, General Mahayana vehicle, and the Vajrayana. And as we've already explained, in each of these three vehicles, there are the vows, the commitments. And so whichever ones you've taken, beginning with the layperson's moral training from refuge, up to the highest Vajrayana samayas, the vow taken in the two highest Tantra sets to avoid the 14 root downfall. So whichever one it is, from falling refuge up to the highest Vajrayana vows, strive to avoid any damage to them. Not just damage to them, but of course, worst of all, breaking them. And the way to strive to avoid that is to utilize the tools, if you like, of mindfulness, clear comprehension, and concern. Concern means taking it seriously. Mindfulness and clear comprehension are the special mental factors of being present. With mindfulness, we remember the teachings and bring our mind back to them. In this case, we remember the pledges and commitments we've made and bring ourselves back to them. Clear comprehension is the ally of mindfulness, because clear comprehension is a mental factor which is alert to conditions around one or inside of one, which may cause one to break one's vows and pledges. So concern and then mindfulness and clear comprehension, these are the ways you keep your commitments. But if a fault does occur, if in some way you contradict one of your commitments, then there's still the remedy of purification through confession, which was explained to us in terms of the 4 powers of confession. However, just to give a technical point, if you commit a tantric root downfall from the highest 2 levels of Tantra, then although you can purify the karmic consequences of that by confession practice, in order to restore the possibility of gaining accomplishment through Vajrayana practice, you would have to retake a major initiation from one of the 2 highest Tantra sets, because only in that way do you reacquire the vows. So merely attending a sok puja or practicing other confession techniques, rituals, would not restore the samaya. They would purify your karma, but not restore the samaya. I just mentioned that because some people might have a question about it. Then the second general point to train in was avoid straying into foolish conduct. It's kind of hard for fools like ourselves. So, what does Rinpoche say? Do not act impulsively to show off your lack of ego clinging. Aha! He's focusing on the kind of little tricks we play to impress people spiritually, to kind of make, as it were, turn our practice into a costume to wear to gather praise and respect from others. So, how to show that I have completely let go of ego clinging? How to, I could wear a badge saying I've abolished my ego. It's a little tacky. So, any other suggestions? Yes, these are some. What you could do to show off your lack of ego clinging, you could perhaps, as Rinpoche says, you could cover your home or your shrine with dust or ash, or you could eat spoiled food, you could dress shabbily, and so on. The marks of a spiritual, detached person who's beyond mere material things. No, the marks of a raving egomaniac, because what he or she wants is people to acknowledge them. You're so holy. No, the appropriate song is, you're so vain. Pater Rinpoche, in his masterpiece, the Kunzang Lama Shaolin, talks about a practitioner who, practitioners who do this kind of thing, who cast ash over their shrines and so on, to make people, their sponsors, think they're very holy, kind of Siddha types of people. But he points out it's just hypocrisy. So Rinpoche continues, don't engage in senseless conduct such as sleeping in wild places, cutting down special trees, destroying, in case you're tempted to do that, destroying sacred objects or traveling to a locality of epidemics. These are of course, it's in a way to be understood in the Tibetan context. These are some things so-called yogis might do to gain the support of villagers and so on, because again, to look like they are totally free from worldly business and from worldly conventions. So we, as Europeans or Americans or whatever, would have to also supply, in a way, versions of this that we might indulge in as Westerners to show that we're great detached people. Instead, so what should we do then? In order to avoid foolish conduct, the foolish conduct of making a mockery of our Lojong by pretending to great detachment and great freedom, what should we do? Rinpoche says, instead, follow the examples of outer and inner purity, according to the tradition of Geshe Dromtompa and the biographies of the holy Kadampas. Outer purity means behaving and appearing externally in a very respectful way, a way that's respectful to the teachings. For monks, it would mean to wear the monastic robes properly. Lay people, again, to dress in a respectful and harmonious way. Of course, main thing is the inner purity. And Rinpoche's point is that is how the early Kadampa Geshis, the great spiritual friends from Atisha's disciple Dromten onwards, behaved. They're examples of both outer respectability and purity and inner transformation of mind through the Lojong. As Rinpoche says, these yogins of mind training meditation, the early Kadampas, possessed immaculate purity in body and mind, and were thus a source of happiness wherever they went. So this is the renouncing of foolish conduct. And then the third general point, renounce partiality, the mind training of not straying into partiality. Rinpoche says, renounce partiality, or bias, if you like, such as working for the benefit of some beings, but not for others. In other words, if you do that, it's not actually loving kindness. Because for us, loving kindness is, may all beings have happiness. Similarly, it's not compassion, because our compassion is, may all beings be free from suffering. And it's not bodhicitta, because in the bodhisattva vow, we make a commitment to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. We don't say, I'm only doing this for those I like, or for those on my side, or for those in my tradition, or those who support the same political party, or whatever it is. Of course, our ego is always making lines. It's how it kind of keeps a control of the world by saying, I like this, I don't like that. You're my friend, you're my enemy. I care about you, I don't care about you. So to have partiality, to have bias, to exclude some and include others is utterly contradictory to Lojong. As he says, working for the benefit of some but not others, offering respect, for instance, to high status individuals while showing contempt for low. You know, that creepy way that one can often be, because one thinks, if I'm nice and smiley to that person who's in power, I will gain something from it. But the lowest is as important to us as the highest, if we're serious about mind training. Or, for instance, Rinpoche says, practicing mind training towards sentient beings, but not in regard to the elements. What he means by that is the mind training of accepting difficulties through taking all of them onto yourself. You can't just do that with regard to trouble caused for you from sentient beings, because some trouble might come from the elements, the environment, the disturbance of the four elements. You must be able to train with that as well as trouble caused by sentient beings. Or again, Rinpoche says, another partiality would be having patience with friends and relatives, but not with enemies. Of course, we in the modern West have invented a new one, which is to pretend to be patient with outsiders and hate our own people. That's just kind of pretend compassion, pretend impartiality. We should cherish and love our neighbor just as much as the stranger. Not pretend to be great and wonderfully liberated people by preferring the stranger to the neighbor. Our ego is so adept at turning the teaching into an adornment for our ego. So this is another subtle perversion we must watch out for. So that is avoiding the partiality, and those are the three general points to training. Now the second pledge, so to speak, Geshe Chekwa says, change your attitude while remaining natural. Okay, what is this? Change your attitude while remaining natural. How can you change and at the same time remain natural? So what the meaning of this is, Rinpoche says, change the motivation you've held until now, that of cherishing self over others, by instead of doing this, taking hold of the care of others. So that's what's to be changed, our self-clinging attitude. One early Kadampa Geshe said, all the mind training could be summed up in 2 lines. Cease cherishing yourself and start cherishing others. So that is the way to turn around. That is what is to be changed. And then, Rinpoche continues, be insatiable in the practice of the outer Dharma and reserve to keep your conduct natural in harmony with all beings, good or bad. So, the crucial thing to be concerned with is the heart. What is in my heart? Is it concern for me above others, or is it concern for others? If that's changed, then following that, practice the outer Dharma. If you're a layperson, practice the teachings as a layperson. If you're a nun or monk, practice the teachings as a nun or monk. If you're scholarly, practice the teachings in that way. If you're not so scholarly, more contemplative, practice the teachings in that way. It doesn't matter. Whatever is kind of natural to you, you should stick with. But inside, the change has been made. The change from self-clinging to cherishing others. As Rinpoche says, inwardly become very familiar with the practice. That means don't separate even for a moment from the practice of bodhicitta, such as in exchanging oneself for others. In this way, like the swiftest of horses, you traverse your journey over a vast expanse of ground. I think what Rinpoche is trying to get at here is that, in a way, the really crucial thing is just this. Has there been this change in your heart? After that, following karmic affinities, you will either practice best as a layperson or practice best as a monastic, scholarly or contemplative, whatever it is. Don't worry about that. Don't spend too much time agonizing or being concerned with that. Just get on with the practice in that style, in that manner, as long as the Lojong is in your heart. That is really what matters. Then third pledge, so-called, Geshe Cheko says, do not talk about weak points. So what does this mean? Again, it identifies a form of behavior which will destroy our Lojong, destroy our practice. Rinpoche explains, whether out of jealousy or just you have a bad character, whether out of jealousy or bad character, at no time, even at the very cost of your life, should you draw attention to others' weaknesses, whether it's their physical weakness, such as difficulties in walking or difficulties in posture, or that their mind is quite feeble and so on, or drawing attention to them being male and therefore having male problems, attention to them being female and therefore being deficient because they're female, and whether it's because they're too young or too old. Any form of categorizing people that is done to kind of bring them down, to denigrate them, to make them seem ridiculous, is of course totally contradictory to Lojong. So, because it's once again a way of excluding people and not cherishing them. So, likewise, Rinpoche says, do not talk judgmentally about weaknesses in another's Dharma practice. Can we not judge? Yeah, this one. Remember, of the two witnesses, think of the principal one, our mind. It sees what we really are. But as regards others, do not be judgmental about weaknesses in another's Dharma practice, such as inconsistency, or their loss of monastic vows, or their fondness for donations, or their hypocrisy, deception, and so forth. There's again, Patrul Rinpoche tells a kind of cute story. I think it's a very cute story about two geshes. It doesn't matter about their names. I can't even remember if he mentions their names, but one geshe, you understand what geshe is, of course. Geshe, in the early Kadampa tradition, the term Gewi Shenyan, spiritual friend, was the term used for the teachers in the early Kadam, Kalyana Mitra in Sanskrit. Later on, Gewi Shenyan, which is shortened to Geshe, Geshe became a scholarly degree, particularly in the Gelug tradition. So Geshe is kind of scholarly masters, one might say, learned people. So anyway, one Geshe wanted to invite one of his friends, colleague, another Geshe, over for, I suppose, afternoon tea. That's very English, but Tibetan too. So he invited, so Geshe A invited Geshe B for tea. And he said, I've got some really interesting news to tell you. So Geshe B was intrigued to hear this news. And so he came over, and as Geshe A poured him the cup of tea, he said, you never believe this, but you know Geshe C? Yeah, he's got a mistress. He's broken his vows. So, of course, that's very unfortunate from a point of view of the purity of the Vinaya. But Patrul Rinpoche quotes, comments on this story, which he's just told, and says, personally, I think that the one who is committed the greatest fault here is not the Geshe who's broken his vows, that's bad, but the one who's committed the greatest fault is the Geshe A, the one who invited his friend over to share with him this excellent and delightful, delicious piece of news. Because it was entirely done out of malice and happiness in somebody else's problems and faults. So this is what is being signaled here in this. Do not talk about weak points, because it destroys us. Maybe it might have been a problem for Geshe C that his breaking the vow would get around, but the one who is but it doesn't necessarily mean his bodhisattva vow is destroyed. But Geshe A has destroyed his bodhisattva vow by indulging in this kind of talk. So Rinpoche continues, it's not even appropriate to despise yourself, in case one was to think the way to behave as a Lojong practitioner is to keep saying, I'm disgusting, I'm evil, I'm low, I'm useless. If you do that, as Rinpoche says, you've forgotten that you possess the freedom, the 8 freedoms, and the 10 endowments that altogether comprise precious human birth, the basis of liberation. And from a Vajrayana point of view, if you're a Vajrayana practitioner, one who's received the major initiation in Anuttara Tantra in this case, for you, the complete mandala, as he puts it, the complete mandala of the deities of the 3 seats are present within you. Because just as in general Dharma, general Mahayana Dharma, we say the nature of your mind is the Buddha nature, in the Anuttara Tantra, in the initiation bestowed upon you in Anuttara Tantra, the Vajra Master reveals to you the existence of the 5 male and female Buddhas, the 8 male and female Bodhisattvas, and the 10 wrathful deities, all within the channels and drops in your subtle body. So you are the mandala of all the Buddhas, and you always have been. That is what is revealed to us in such a major initiation. So it's totally inappropriate to despise oneself. From an ordinary Dharma point of view, because you have the precious human birth. From a Vajrayana point of view, because actually the Buddhas already dwell within us. So this is the point. Of course, one should see that right now, so to speak, the Buddha nature or the mandala deities is covered by the clouds of my negative habits and so on. But fundamentally, the purity remains. So if one despises oneself, one is despising the Buddha nature, or in Vajrayana, the mandala of the deities. And then Rinpoche says, do not, 4th point, Geshe Chekwa says, sorry, do not dwell on the faults of others. Well, this is, in a way, continuing the theme from do not talk about weak points. Rinpoche explains, as well as discarding outward negative words and looks, like drawing attention, verbally saying something bad about somebody, you do not dwell inwardly on whatever faults there are in others. There shouldn't be something you're concentrating on in your mind. If you should see or hear of some defect in another, compare it to your own heap of faults. We should think, well, I'm seeing that fault in him or her, but it could well be that is just a reflection of the same fault that I have. After all, why should I notice it in another? Why should I be sensitive to that fault in that person? Doesn't it imply that I'm familiar with that fault myself? Perhaps even now I still have that fault. Which of course means that instead of seeing that fault to put that other person down, condemn that other person, reject them, one tries immediately to remove the clouds that are covering your heart, the things that would strangle your bodhicitta if left to be. Instead of dwelling on whatever faults others might have, think instead about the benefits of mind training, of putting others before yourself and so on, and use the methods of Lojong to reverse the flaws, the faults within your own character. In other words, if I see somebody who has a particular fault, I actually think, as I said, likely I have them, so that shouldn't I get on with my business? Don't I have a house here to clean, rather than say my neighbor's house is dirty? That's how it should be. In particular, now Rinpoche wants to extend this a little bit. In particular, do not conceive of the presence of faults in your root lamas. Oh dear, that's going to open up a can of worms. So let's try and prise the can of worms open gently and intelligently. first of all, who are your root lamas? Well, actually, there are two understandings of this term root lama, which are not finally contradictory, but different masters and traditions present understanding slightly differently. So, from a Vajrayana point of view, because actually in the lower vehicles, in the Hinayana, Shravakayana, the spiritual master is the one who gives you refuge, and perhaps also the one who gives you the individual liberation vow, whether you're a layperson or monastic. And so typically you should regard that person as a senior member of the Sangha. In the Mahayana, the main function of the spiritual friend, because that's the name properly used in the Mahayana, according to Mahayana Sutras and Shastras, is to give you the Bodhisattva vow. So in the Vajrayana, the master is the Vajra master, the one who bestows upon you initiation, and secondarily the lungs, the reading transmissions for the tantric practices, and the tree, the guide in the instruction, the guiding instructions for the practice. So the function of the teacher is different according to three vows, and the Vajrayana, so now to talk just about the Vajrayana Lama, because really that's where the root Lama concept is most emphasized. So the general understanding in Vajrayana is that the root Lama is the one who personally bestows upon you the initiation. And he is therefore distinguished from the lineage lamas. The lineage lamas are those lamas who held the chain of transmission of that particular tantric cycle from Vajradhara Buddha down to your present human Sawi Lama, root Lama. And you can see this in every lineage prayer. For instance, in the White Tower lineage prayer, for which His Holiness read the lung, you chant the names of the lineage lamas, and it comes down to finally your own root Lama, the one who bestows upon you the actual initiation in this case. Typically, the name of the root Lama is not mentioned, but nevertheless it says root Lama. It will say something like embodiment of Tara or union of the Buddhas of the three times. Sawi Lama, please bless me. So that is a general Vajrayana understanding of the root Lama. Now another understanding of the root Lama is one that is particularly emphasized. This one is emphasized in all the four traditions, but another way of talking about root Lama is one that's quite common in Kagyu and Nyingma, and that is because of the emphasis in Kagyu and Nyingma on the teachings of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And in Kagyu and Nyingma, it's said that, in a way, the most important way in which the Lama, as it were, teaches you Mahamudra or Dzogchen is by introducing you to the nature of your mind. Or in Nyingma, this is called to give you the initiation of the Rigpi Selwang, the initiation of the display of awareness, which can be given as part of a formal initiation or just informally. Anyway, that's another matter. So for many Kagyu and Nyingma presentations, the root Lama, who is the one who decisively has introduced you to the nature of your mind. You may have received teachings from a number of Lamas before this or after this, but the most precious one is the one who introduces you to the nature of mind. So often, therefore, people say, my root Lama is such and such a person. So we have to, in a way, I suggest, hold both these understandings as in mind. If you're a Kagyu or Nyingma practitioner, you certainly have to hold this second understanding in your mind while not worrying about it. Because it might well be the case that you have not yet been decisively introduced to the nature of your mind. You've not met the Lama who will do that, or you have, but he's not yet done that, or you've not been receptive enough. It's okay, you can still practice. But at the same time, that emphasis mustn't make you think that the ones who give you initiation are not your Lama, because they are. And you will make samaya with each of them, as is there in every initiation, major or minor, mandal initiation or even a permission initiation. So therefore one should have respect and appreciation, up to devotion in fact, through all your lamas. But of course, over the course of your lifetime, one or two may be particularly significant. And so you emphasize them most. And if you're a Mahamudra or Dzogchen practitioner, you will particularly cherish the one who, as it said, introduced you to the nature of your mind. So it's a long kind of deviation in a way, but just to clarify this incredibly powerful term, but term that is the source of so many confusions in the West. Probably everywhere else too, but there you are. So, do not conceive the presence of faults in your root lamas. Do I need to say anything else to set you up properly for this? Yeah. You need to, as Patrimote explains, you need to examine those you want to take as lamas. Patrimote says, first examine, because not everything is what it is cracked up to be. Not everything, all that glitters is not gold. So he says first check to make sure the lamas are actually really to be taken as lamas. Then you can serve the lama with respect and devotion, and then finally the lama's qualities will transfer to you. This is not, it has to be taken very seriously. And there are many texts which spell out in detail the qualities of the lama that you should rely upon, as well as the qualities we need to develop as the disciples. So, right, let's get to what Rinpoche says here. Do not conceive of the presence of faults in your root lamas. Through an old woman's pure vision, even the tooth of a dog was transformed into a sacred relic. So, yes, pure vision, pure vision. I think you've probably all heard that story of the Tibetan businessman who was setting out for India to trade, to bring back things from India to sell. And his old mother, a very devout but very simple lady, said, "Oh, please bring back a relic of the Buddha from India." Well, easier said than done, of course. So he went to India and always had just in time, and went around here, went around there, bought quite some things to take back to Tibet. But just as he's kind of left India and got back onto the Tibetan side, he realizes he's forgotten entirely about his mother's request to him. As luck would have it, karma, he sees on the side of the road the skeleton of a deceased dog. And moreover, he sees the dog had a full set of teeth. So he extracts one from the dog's mouth, takes it home to his Buddha, wraps it in a katag, I'm sure, takes it home to his mother and says, "Mother, I've brought you a holy relic from India. It's a tooth of Lord Buddha." So she puts it on her shrine. She's so delighted. She puts it on her shrine. Every day she makes prostrations to it. And later on, when the son visits his mother, he sees that its glowing lights are being emitted from the dog's tooth. And little relics, ring cell, are being deposited from it. In other words, how did this happen? Well, solely through her pure vision, her devotion. A mundane thing like a dog's tooth became, really in a way, the Buddha's relic, the Buddha's tooth. So Rinpoche is saying how important pure vision is. And so, by contrast, the inconstant view of impure vision, the mind which projects impurity, baseness, lowness, and so on onto things, is so destructive. Because when we apply it, for instance, to our spiritual teachers, when we have that impure view towards our spiritual teachers, the faith that we should have to them, faith in confidence that they're competent to transmit the Buddha's liberating teachings to us, goes out the window. And so does gratitude. And so everything that we could receive from them is destroyed because of our impure vision. And this, he says, resembles the examples of Devadatta and the monk Shunakshatra, or Lekpikama in Tibetan, and a certain Tirthika, a non-Buddhist follower, all of whom saw faults even in Shakyamuni. So it's like, people could even project impure, base views onto the Buddha himself. So Devadatta, you all know that Devadatta was the jealous cousin of the Buddha who grew up with him or near him and was always scheming to undermine the Buddha. Like as a child, he's the one who shot the swan, which the child Buddha was looking after. And he his deviousness led him to even take ordination in the Sangha, where he again tried to compete with the Buddha. Like, for instance, it's Devadatta who said that the monastic rules weren't strong enough because Buddha was being lazy and too soft in for instance, his ruling that meat could be eaten as long as it avoids the three faults. Devadatta boasted, we should be purely vegetarian. You a backslider, Buddha, and tried to cause a schism, a split in the ordained Sangha. And it's Devadatta, of course, who incited the wild elephant to try to kill the Buddha. All this came from his impure vision, originating in his jealousy. And Rinpoche's, what's implicit in what Rinpoche is saying is, look, through your impure vision, the result of your defilements, you could even be like Devadatta, see something which is utterly flawless, like Buddha, and attribute flaws to them. And the same with the example of Lekpikama, or Buddhashatra, in giving his Sanskrit name. He was a monastic disciple of the Buddha, but he was one of those, I don't know, there's always somebody like this, some kind of grumbler and always looking fault finder like that, always finding faults. So finally, at one time, the other monastic disciples came to Lord Buddha to relate what Lekpikama had been saying, spreading around, and which was that he was saying, I've been with him for 25 years, and apart from the 50-foot rainbow light aura around him, Buddha, there's no difference between him and me. So the monks, they tried to discourage Lekpikama from this, but finally they couldn't, so they took the case to Buddha, and then Buddha said, let him come and speak to me then. And he came and repeated this charge, this criticism to Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha said, don't say those things. You could come to an unhappy end. Actually, in fact, I can see, Lord Buddha said to him, that with Nunshi, with high knowledge, that you'll die in 7 days. And be reborn in the Yidak realm, the hungry ghost realm. And Lekpikama went off scoffing and said, he's just lying. It's not true. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. But just in case he didn't eat or drink anything for 7 days, I suppose he was thinking it might be poisoned after all. So he avoided food and drink for 7 days. Unfortunately, at the end of 7 days, he went mad and drank some contaminated water and died, and was then born in the hungry ghost realm. So don't be like Lekpikama. It's dangerous. And then Rinpoche doesn't mention the Tirthika who saw faults even in the Buddha, but actually there's the story, he doesn't name anybody there, but there's the story that one time some jealous Brahmin, I can't remember, it's a woman from the Brahmin or Kshatriya caste who made a false allegation about the Buddha. She was pretending to be a jindak, pretending to be a sponsor, and to invite the Buddha and the followers for lunch or something. But she then made a false allegation about the Buddha. Of course, it later came out. It was, I think somebody put her up to it or something. But you see, again, even for Lord Buddha, it's possible that this kind of these impure views can be projected. So Rinpoche is implying. So in regard to those we've taken as teachers, after investigation, as serious consideration, if we impute faults to them, it's destructive for us. Now, another point needs to be clarified there. Rinpoche will say, according to the sutras and tantras, it is rare in this dark age to find a spiritual master with the authentic characteristics. But whether your Lama really does possess faults or not, by maintaining pure vision towards him or her, the jewel of your pledges will naturally be cleansed. It's like this. You see, the great master Sarchen Losar Jamso, who wrote a commentary on the 50 verses on the Guru, a very important text on explaining these matters. In there, Sarchen comments, actually, although the qualities of the Lama should be, etc., 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 perfect in every way. He said, in this dark age, and Sarchen was writing in the 16th century, a considerably less dark age than our own from a spiritual point of view. He said, in this dark age, it would be difficult to find a master who possesses only qualities and no faults. So, from the wise disciple will take a master in whom the qualities outweigh the faults. Of course, also he has to have all the technical qualifications of a master, but in terms of this fault and quality ratio, as long as his qualities or her qualities are more numerous than the faults, this person can be a master to rely on. And when you've taken such a master, when you follow such a master, you should dwell on his or her qualities. Why? To please him? No. Because in a way the Lama acts as a reflection through which you can see your Buddha nature. It's not rock and roll, I'm not sure what it is. Or maybe that's just my impure vision, maybe it is rock and roll. Anyway, so the point is, it's what is pragmatic, what works for us. What works for us is that through the Lama and his teaching and his presence and behavior, we can see the potential for Buddha nature that's in us reflected. Whereas if we concentrate on the so-called faults, or even thinking things like, well, the Lama likes very strange food, or Lama, why does he speak in such an accent? Then nothing is being given to us. Nothing's being given to us. So we overcome those things by seeing the Buddha nature pointed out by the Lama. And that is the point of pure vision and devotion towards the Lama. When in some respects the Lama may just be an ordinary person. To find a Lama who has achieved the noble bhumis, for instance, would be amazing, is amazing to do such a thing. Most Lamas don't actually have that level of realization. But if they're faithful to the Buddha's teachings, in their teaching and their behavior, and their qualities outweigh their faults, then we can practice this devotion of pure vision towards them. Because it will be good for us, as it said, whether your Lama really does possess faults or not, by maintaining pure vision towards him or her, the jewel of your pledges will naturally be cleansed. But I've talked about this a lot, just so you get the context. It's not asking you to practice blind faith, or to imagine that a pig is a king or something like that. You must use your discriminated intelligence to sort out who is an effective Lama, who you would find beneficial to rely upon. Then, having done that, then this kind of a relationship is developed, particularly in Vajrayana, if you receive initiation, and then you can train in this type of pure vision. So this is utterly different from blind faith that will lead as such, and also says in his commentary, to throw themselves at the feet of total deceivers. You will not do that if you think intelligently and carefully what you should really proceed with regard to lamas. So that really is the fourth point. Now, somebody said to me yesterday that there were still a few questions that people were wanted to ask yesterday. If that's true, we could leave a space now. Otherwise, I can continue with the text. So if there are some questions, you could ask them now with the same qualification as yesterday. I'll answer them if I can.
Hello, I wanted to follow up on something I asked yesterday.
Yes.
Because it was about this, like this abyss or something like this discrepancy between the view and the action and the everyday life. Yeah, You were talking about giving some beggars something. That was my example.
Oh yes,
yeah?
yes.
What to do if you feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was only part of the question. The other question was like, really, if you train your mind so much on this amazing, vast view, and then on the other hand, yeah, you have like this very limited ability to act on it. I have the feeling there's this very strange discrepancy in my mind, and it feels so hypocritical or, really strange, It's strengthening by training my mind and my actions not completely growing accordingly, So I wonder what to do with it, if I can work with it, if I embrace it somehow, if I can incorporate that, or do I just make this divide and say, oh, this is the one thing, this is the other, don't be bothered, that they don't really match at all. How to deal with that?
I think one must be gentle with oneself in the practice. It's wonderful to have high aspirations. If we set the aspirations of a lower bar, we'll never even reach that one. So every day we renew our bodhicitta aspirations, like prayers in the morning or at some time like that. And then we do what we can during the day to remember that and live in harmony with it. At the end of the day, we can evaluate how we've done, and we'll see, in this respect, I did embody that aspiration. In another aspect, I lost it and forgot it. Tomorrow, I'll do better, and that's the key thing. Always to think, to evaluate one's conduct and how in harmony, but always to think, I can tomorrow, in the immortal words of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, tomorrow is another day. We can start again. Every day fresh. Every day begin. And gradually, the vast abyss, the gulf between this wonderful aspiration and the reality of our daily behavior, gradually. And that's why I mentioned that thing about Tibetans, when they hear the teaching enjoining them to give their body to others, they think, like the great Bodhisattva, may I one day be able to do that. So they don't doubt that it is possible, but they know, kali, another Tibetan phrase, slowly. That is the way we train. So I'm afraid there's a little, I'm not sure what your cultural background is, but there's, for many Westerners, of course, there's this kind of, in a way, I hate the word guilt, because people, you probably understand why I hate it, because it's a way to beat up Westerners by saying you'll carry Catholic or Protestant guilt. I don't, but despite my humble background. But there's a kind of sense in many Westerners, I'm not doing good enough. I'm not doing well enough. I'm too impure for this. But the whole basis is Buddha nature. We are fundamentally pure. We are fundamentally capable. We just lost touch with it. That's a sense we should have. So slowly, I can reconnect with this extraordinary treasure inside myself of compassion, but slowly, slowly, gently, gently. So never give in to despondency. Despondency is said to be one of the three ways one abandons the bodhisattva vow, by thinking, for instance, I'm too low, too small. In Bodhitavatara, Shantideva says, never do this, because once they develop the power of aspiration, even those who are currently insects will become Buddhas. And there's a famous story about, the pigs being chased around the stupa, because that was the beginning of their path to Buddhahood. So we can do it. Oh, yes, we all are too lazy, but slowly, slowly we can do better. Slowly, slowly.
Hello,
Yeah.
I'm over here. Thank you. Hello. Hey, I first of all, Lama, I particularly enjoyed your teaching today. I thought it was really great. The other ones were good too, but today was particularly nice.
So you would say this? I should put this on the greatest hits album.
Definitely, definitely. Greatest hits from Britain. Britain's
Yeah,
greatest
thank you.
hits. But the question I had was that I think Karmapa said, and then some of our other teachers have said from time to time, maybe yourself included, that Buddhism isn't a religion. Okay, and I was wondering then if you could explain why it so often seems to have many of the trappings of a religion. In other words, when we speak with people we're from the United States, and people ask about Buddhism, and you would say, well, it's not really a religion, it's something else, whatever that might be. And then they say, well, then why are there all these statues and things of this nature, So I was just wondering if you could comment on that, because I'd be quite interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, you're speaking to somebody who spent from 1973 to 2001 in the Department of Religious Studies in Britain. You see, this is becoming a bit of a chestnut. This Buddhism is it a religion? Is it not a religion? And to be honest, this might sound slightly cynical, this is just a selling stratagem which has been developed by Western and Eastern Buddhists for Buddhism to propagate in the West. Most people who trot this out don't actually know how we should define religion in the first place. Now, if we think of religion in terms of theistic religion, like Abraham, that derived from the three Abrahamic religions, clearly Buddhism is not like that, because we're not theistic. We don't believe in a creator God. But we do believe that there is a difference between mind and matter, and so that puts us in the camp of those religions. We're not materialists, we're not secularists or materialists. We believe in past and future lives, and so on. So we're not materialism. You see, just to shortcut this thing, actually, in a way, a better solution is to drop the whole distinction between religions, philosophies, and the rest, and just talk in terms of views, tawa, in Tibetan. There's a whole range, and in ancient India they had this, because in ancient India you talked about the different tenet systems, some of which are Buddhist, some of which are non-Buddhist, including atheists, materialists, theists, and then non-theistic spiritual people like us and the Jains. They're all just views of the world. All just views of the world. Now, not all those views of the world include practice in them, doing certain types of exercises with our mind. So that's another distinction within the views. But see, it makes it it lowers the temperature. We can't, when we just talk of Buddhism as another view of the world, which it is, alongside all these others. And besides which, you see, in the West, we're still haunted by the split between theology and philosophy that happened in the 17th and 18th centuries. That split never happened in Asia. So in the West, that's why people from the very beginning of propagating Buddhism have been very anxious to distinguish themselves from Christian theology. And so resorting to saying things like Buddhism is scientific, it's not, by the way. Buddhism is a philosophy, not a religion. They're all philosophies, is my answer. So if it gets more people to your local meditation center, you can call it a non-religion if you like, but I don't really take it seriously. That was a bit of kind of from behind, exposing the workings behind the stage there. Yes. So you need the microphone. I can't hear.
All right, so thank you for that answer. And I guess my thought then was, at the beginning of it you said, we see a difference between mind and matter.
Yes, we
as
do.
Buddhists.
Yes.
Okay, that's a little bit different from my understanding in that in Buddhism we ultimately see, at an ultimate level, if I understand correctly, and maybe I don't, is that we see the non-reality of matter itself.
Yes, that's true. That's
Okay.
from the third tenet system, the Chittamatra system, and the Madhyamaka. That's absolutely true. But in terms of functional, conventional truth, how the world works, it's precisely because mind is distinct from matter that mind continues at the time of death, whereas matter returns to the four elements. So in terms of making sense of the world functionally, yes, we make a distinction between matter and mind. But ultimately, there is no matter separate from mind.
Okay, so sometimes when people have asked that, I've said or felt like maybe I could say that the reason that Buddhism isn't particularly like a religion, though maybe other religions are like this too, would be to say that there's a goal. In other words, the realization of the non-reality of matter and the nature of things. And then instead of having practices that we do because it would make a God happy or a God told us to do it, we do these practices and we try to behave in a certain way as a means of achieving that goal for the benefit of all beings.
Yes, that is true. That is a distinction. It's a good one actually to make. But the theists who'd say also they have a goal, which is union with God. So many Hindu theists, for instance, like Advaita Vedantins and so on, would say they have a practice and they do have a God. And the aim is absorption of the self into the Godhead. Atman dissolved into Brahman. So it's a good distinction, but like all such things, only up to a point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your teachings. Yeah, a little bit ago, it sounded like you said in the 16th century, people were more spiritually
I was
alive.
just teasing you all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, humor, great, thank
Yeah.
you.
You see, I'm not a believer in the New Age. None of us are in Dharma because we think things have been getting worse since the time of Lord Buddha in the terms of the number of people who can achieve realization. Again, this is not a popular thing to say, but it's actually the truth of what we think inside Dharma.
Good morning, Lama Jampa.
Yep.
I have a question regarding what Karmatila Rinpoche explained to unite the practice of Chenrezig and Tonglen,
Oh yeah.
and more specifically in the Tongtong Gyalpo meditation.
Yes.
So what I heard about in the commentary from the 15th Karmapa, we don't visualize ourselves as Chenrezig. So there is Chenrezig which is above our head, for example. And I wonder how to implement Tonglen meditation with Chenrezig.
No, I didn't get the last bit, so I can't quite hear.
You know, with the Tonglen, what I understand is you breathe in and you breathe out. And you breathe in what is nefast or non-virtuous, and you breathe out all your happiness. But here, when Chenrezig is above my head, I don't really know how to unite.
No, in Rinpoche's commentary, this is when your body is that of Chenrezig. When Chenrezig has been dissolved into you, and you're appearing in the form of Chenrezig, then you absorb all the negativity, and that negativity then, in a way, makes the brilliance of Chenrezig's body even stronger. So it's at that, and then Rinpoche later says one can do this sending taking, combine it with the mantra, and again, the mantra is done when you are in the full form of Chenrezig.
Okay, so in the context of Tongtong Gyalpo meditation,
Yeah.
it is during the phase of the mantra, or how is it exactly?
You can do either, as I just said. You could do it without reciting the mantra, but I think it would be more effective to combine it with the mantra.
Okay, thank you.
And then after that, you have to go over there afterwards, Danny. First here. This.
Relatively simple, basic question, but it's also Tonglen. Oftentimes it feels like there's not enough breath for me in terms of like time to visualize taking in all that should be taken in and sending out all that should be sent out.
With the breath initially. It can be taught that way, that connecting it with the breath has a certain supportive function, but if one wants to kind of, in a way, take one's time on each phase, don't bother about the breath. Just do it to the pace you like. Which is, the point about all meditation instructions, that they're just techniques, they're just suggestions. So it's not that we should be dilettantish and inventing our own, but we need to take our time to almost like to be present to the practice. So if in terms of the taking, you want to kind of really consider how many difficulties there are and what they are, and then try to absorb them, then take your time on that. And the same with descending. It's taught in that way as well, but just here, this kind of useful, skillful means of connecting with the breath is emphasized. Yeah. I think there's a question over there too. Right over the other side, Danny.
Hello, Lama Jampa. Thank you for the teachings. Would it be possible for you to give us the lung for the root text?
The what?
The lung.
Lung, yeah, okay. I could. For the root text or the commentary?
Whatever you will give us.
I'll try to give a little bit tomorrow, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. There's one here, Danny.
I have a question about the principal witness, the one we should trust. But I feel like there is always ego somewhere around us.
Sorry, can you begin? I didn't
about
quite...
the principal witness. The question, can you hear me? The principal witness.
Oh, the principal witness, yes. Sorry, yeah.
And the one we should trust. But I feel like there is almost always ego somewhere around us,
yes.
whispering.
Yes.
Usually, oh, how great I am. Or sometimes, no, I'm really bad. So my question is how to fine-tune the principal witness.
Yes.
So we can really trust.
Yes,
trust
because you're right. It would be very easy to fool oneself.
Right, as we do.
in assuming one is actually doing well, or one has generated loving kindness and compassion. So this requires a kind of seriousness in evaluating oneself. And one useful method to strengthen that constant self-reflection, that habit of self-examination, is the practice at the end of the day, which Patra Rinpoche teaches in Gunzolam Michelin, of, as it were, reviewing the main events of the day. So that you go back to the morning, and then you think about the major things that happened, or the major emotions that happened, and go through. And either literally or metaphorically, for each positive thing that you did, or each very strong positive emotion you had, you put a white stone there. For each negative emotion or negative activity you did, you put a black stone there. And so at the end, maybe after 2 or 3 minutes, you end up with 2 piles, white and black. So so you're forced to therefore acknowledge how you've deviated when you can see and therefore you regret that, and resolve, as I was saying earlier, to do better the next day. The positive things that you may have done, however many they are, you rejoice in them and think, I'll increase that number together. So this habit of self-examination is very helpful. It's not foolproof in overcoming our capacity to fool ourselves, but it's a very good way, because you do have to, as it were, look in the mirror again and again. So this becomes then second nature in this way. So this is one technique that could be used. It would be helpful in this respect. There's Danny, somebody at the front here.
I've been wondering what in Buddhist terms the benefit of marriage can be. Of marriage.
Marriage?
Yes,
maybe
getting married.
Ask His Holiness.
Because in a way, I feel like it can kind of uphold this illusion of, like, first of all, attachment, of course, and then this illusion of something not ending, like a relationship not ending. And at the same time, I wonder how we can benefit each other in marriage.
Okay, well, I'll start from an unusual position. St. Paul tells you, get married or burn. But no, I mean, I think the thing is that for Dharma people, serious about Dharma, I mean, some may have the affinity to be monastics, and that's really wonderful if they do, but that would have to be combined with a suitable environment, which is not very present in the West. But otherwise, I think Rinpoche put it like this, actually. Kamata Rinpoche said, and he's a monk, he kept his vows in the West, but he said that it can be like the Sangha for you. He meant a family as a whole, but in particular, think of one's partner as like a Dharma comrade. A Dharma comrade, the best comrade you could have, because you share the same values, you share the same aspirations. You don't necessarily have to do the same practice, of course, and neither will you become enlightened at the same time, like holding hands into nirvana. But you will, for a short time of this life at least, you'll be comrades supporting each other. So I think it's a wonderful resource. Now, of course, yes, one could say that that's romantic, but we don't, of course, have the Western romantic view that your partner is completing the missing half of you, because there is no missing half. You have Buddha nature entire and intact. So you're not looking for somebody to make that up, to give you what you don't have, which puts a strain on relationships, of course. But so I feel the word comrade is a good one in this, beloved comrade. So I think there may be one, is there one more? This lady here.
Thank you very much for your teachings and your wonderful British accent.
Oh, yeah. I actually I don't speak like Hugh Grant or the Queen because I'm from the north of England. People from the south of England, even though I'm educated, they can always tell where I'm from. So I'm rejoicing in you overlooking that.
My question is, you mentioned that Buddhism is not science.
It's not what?
Science. You just said that earlier, answering the question in the back. You said Buddhism is a viewpoint, a point of view, and philosophies and things like that. But why is Buddhism not science? Because my impression is everything we learn in Buddhism, in the end, it will all get proven by science. Science is just behind it.
So it appears difficulty.
Science, you said earlier, Buddhism is not science, but maybe I missed.
Buddhism is not?
Science. Science?
Not science, yes. Science is science is a praxis. It's a means of investigating material phenomena and deducing things from how those material phenomena, under certain conditions, seem to act. Buddhism, but you see, Buddhism is logical. It's based upon reasoning and not upon blind faith. But Buddhism is not something that can be tested in a laboratory because it's not concerned with material phenomena. You see, why I said that, in a way, it's like my response to the whole question of, isn't Buddhism not a religion? Because I'm a historian of religions, technically speaking, academically, I see where those propaganda lines came from. For instance, this one about Buddhism is a science, if that's what you're alluding to, it came because when the Protestant missionaries came to Sri Lanka in the late 19th century, they laid a great stress to the Sri Lankan Buddhists. Oh, we're from a scientific society. Look at the wonderful advances of the West. You're just poor heathens. You don't know anything. Our religion is what has made Buddhism at West so materially wealthy. But the Buddhist monks looked at Christian scriptures and thought, this is actually mostly illogical faith. And so they turned the tables on them and said, no, we're closer to science than you because we believe in reason. Now, it's true, we believe in reason. So the monks were right in a way. But this became a bit of a propaganda exercise. If we stuck at saying Buddhism is testable by reasoning, this would be accurate historically. But we're not against science, by the way. Anybody can be a scientist, whether they're Christian or Buddhist or Jew and atheist, because it's simply testing seemingly material substances, that's all. So that is why I get a little worried when I see people saying Buddhism is scientific, because I know that an actual scientist will come back and say, that's a claim that is too exaggerated. That's my point. So reason, yes. Material science, no. But not that we reject science, but it's just one particular form of human activity. This has to be the final one because the science of food is awaiting people.
Thank you. I heard you saying repeatedly, actually something that struck me when you said that samsara had no beginning and no end.
No.
No beginning.
No beginning.
Exactly. No, it has an end, of course.
Yes, as Karmapa Ranjan Dorji says in Nyingpo, it is beginningless, but it has an end.
Okay.
Is this the answer then?
Maybe, actually.
Well, it has an end now. Did you hear the bell?
Yes. That's a crucial distinction, yes.
But there'll be time tomorrow for more questions.
Yeah, I will be gone tomorrow, so thank you for your teachings.
Okay.
I hope to see you soon.
So safe journey back.
Thank you.
Okay. Sunam de tamshi zikpane tobe nepe dranam pamjin chega nachi bala dupe sipi sole drowa sho.
Dear friends, please stay a little while with us.